I've seen what flat earthers have claimed we've never been to space because a rocket engine wouldn't work in a vacuum. So let's see some tests and see if this is true.
So how a drone flies, obviously, is that those propellers spin, it creates lower pressure on top, higher on the bottom, and it pushes the drone up. But a key feature of that is that you actually need air to make that happen. So let's see what would happen if we take all the air out of the chamber. Do you think the drone would still be able to fly? Let's check. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on the vacuum pump, and then I'm going to fly it as I pump out the air, and let's see if it goes down as the air is getting pumped out. Okay, drone in a vacuum chamber. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm just gonna let it hover there. About negative 0.5 atmospheres. I'm having to throttle up more and more and more. Negative 0.8 atmospheres. Look, it's full throttle. It can't even get off the ground now. I can't do anything. Okay, so you can see the propeller spin. It's essentially just vibrating on the ground right now. Okay, now I'm going to slowly increase the pressure and see if we can get it to fly. So I'm gonna have it on full throttle. Full throttle, I'm gonna let in some air. Oh, there it goes. See, now it has no problem. Oh, it's at the top now. See, now I got a down throttle. Flying all over the place. So a rocket moves similar to this balloon. When I open it, it's going to expel air out the back and push the balloon forward. Okay, so I've lowered it to about the same air pressure that the drone couldn't fly in. So now I'm gonna remove the magnets and see if the balloon flies. 3, 2, 1. Look at that. So what's cool about that is what that means is it doesn't matter whether you fly a rocket in the atmosphere or outside of the atmosphere, it'll still fly, it'll still go forward. When the first rockets were being built and nobody had ever gone into outer space before, scientists knew due to physics that the rocket should still be able to shoot forward in space, but there's never been any actual proof that it could actually work. So they were actually just guessing and hoping that it would actually work in space. And it did.
Sir Isaac Newton, does your law still apply over 330 years later in a vacuum? Well, I hope you're watching because we're about to find out. Set. All right, we got our blast shield in place for safety. Our vacuum chamber is in a vacuum. Our rocket is set, wired up, ready to go. And yeah, I'm excited. The only thing I have left to do is take these two wires, touch them to the terminals on this battery, and hopefully it doesn't go boom. Hopefully it just goes whoosh. Get through the thing. Our solid rocket motor burned in a vacuum. As you can see, that was a success. Not only did our solid rocket motor burn in a vacuum, but it also produced thrust during those initial moments of ignition, which is exactly what I was looking for to support Newton's third law. Because any thrust produced under these conditions is produced off of the pure reaction of the fuel burning and not from the thrust pushing against air or an atmosphere. Now, something that I found really interesting was where the main ignition occurred. If you look closely at the high-speed footage, you can see the majority of the gas started to ignite in the vacuum chamber, not right behind the rocket motor, as I would expect. I'm not sure why that is, but that looked pretty cool. I'm just going to do one more experiment. I'm going to get a really small model rocket motor, 1/10 the size of this solid rocket booster, and put it in the same chamber. And what that's going to do is that's going to essentially increase the amount of volume of our chamber by 10, since the motor is 1/10 the size of this motor. That burns a little bit slower than the solid rocket booster here. We're going to be able to see whether or not it's creating thrust in a vacuum, and that's going to further validate Newton's third law. Here it goes. Okay, so that was another successful burn. The model rocket motor burned just fine in the vacuum chamber. Unfortunately, it didn't go exactly as planned because the sled got wedged in between the walls of the chamber when I pulled a deeper vacuum. But if you look closely at the motor, when it first ignited, it produced some thrust and it pushed itself into the casing where it was being held. That to me further supports Newton's third law. Apparently it applies in a vacuum as well as atmospheric pressure. Yeah, I think that was enough proof for me.
Okay, got it hanging in there, completely suspended. So after it's glued, the only way the gas can come out is through the tip of the syringe. Once the gas starts pouring out, it should send the syringe flying in the opposite direction. Now let's try to ignite it by just holding our laser in one spot. Whoa. Holy cow, that generated a lot of force. Once the rocket took off, it smashed into the wall just into a million pieces. That's so cool. Hey, it worked. Look how cool that looks. You can see the stream of smoke particles shooting out of the rocket like a laser beam. Since there's very little air in the chamber, there's nothing for the stream of gas to bump into, so it has a very straight flow with little turbulence. So if we were at this pressure in the sky, we wouldn't be able to use a traditional jet engine to provide thrust. We would have to use a rocket. Rockets not only work in a vacuum, but they actually work better in a vacuum than at atmospheric pressure. The propulsion in a rocket comes from the fact that you're expelling gas out the nozzle of the rocket at high speeds. In order to conserve momentum, that means that there has to be an equal and opposite force on the rocket in the opposite direction.